It's Christmas morning in a world that doesn't exist anymore, when every kitchen smelled like boiling sugar and every countertop held a pan of cooling candy no store could ever copy. These weren't just sweets. They were gestures of care and creativity in an era when money was tight and store shelves were bare. Moms, aunts, and grandmas pulled off tiny miracles with corn syrup, food coloring, and a whole lot of imagination. But somewhere along the way, America walked away from them. Today, we're digging up 25 old-fashioned Christmas candies this country quietly quit making, and the memories they left behind. Cherry Cordial Creams. Cherry Cordial Creams, sometimes called holiday parlor chocolates, were the kind of Christmas candy your grandmother saved for moments when she wanted the house to look a little fancy, like when the pastor stopped by unexpectedly or the neighbors came over to admire the tree. The centers were made from a silky fondant, powdered sugar, softened butter, and just enough cherry juice from a jar of maraschinos to tint it a delicate blush pink. The aroma alone, sweet, fruity, a little floral, felt like stepping into a warm kitchen with carols humming from the radio on top of the fridge. Each fondant ball was pressed around a whole cherry with its stem removed, then tucked into the icebox to firm up before dipping. Meanwhile, chocolate melted slowly in a double boiler, creating a glossy pool that perfumed the whole room. Women dipped each chilled center quickly with a pair of forks, setting the finished candies on wax paper that crinkled like wrapping paper. As they cooled, the fondant softened around the cherry, creating that signature cordial burst that made people close their eyes for a second bite. When arranged on cut glass plates beside Spritz cookies and sugared nuts, these creams looked like something that belonged in a department store candy counter. Only homemakers made them for a fraction of the cost. Cherry Cordial creams faded as boxed versions took over grocery shelves, but the homemade kind, with their tender centers and soft pink glow, were once the showpieces of every mid-century Christmas table. Burnt sugar caramels. If you saw a saucepan turning suspiciously dark on a 1970s stovetop, chances were good someone was making burnt sugar caramels. These weren't mistakes. The burnt flavor was intentional, giving the candy a deep molasses-like edge that made grown-ups swoon. Homemakers stirred the mixture with long wooden spoons until their wrists ached, then poured the glossy caramel into buttered pans to firm up near an open window. Before cutting, they pressed pecan halves across the surface, a touch that made the tin look more expensive than it really was. Wrapped in wax paper squares, these caramels lasted weeks, unless a curious kid sneaked into the pantry. They vanished from modern tables, mostly because the technique scares off newer cooks, but one taste could transport you right back to a GE stovetop humming on Christmas Eve. Old-time buttermints. Before pastel buttermints came, in factory bags, families made them by hand from handwritten, simple recipes. Powdered sugar, butter, evaporated milk, maybe a little cream cheese, and a few drops of mint were kneaded into a soft dough on Formica countertops dusted like fresh snow. Mothers tinted batches pink, green, and yellow with a McCormick food coloring that came in tiny glass bottles. After rolling the mixture into long ropes, they sliced it into tiny pillows and left them to dry on cookie sheets lined with newspaper. The result was a melt-in-your-mouth mint that tasted like every Christmas open house from 1968. They disappeared because nobody has time to let candy cure on the counter for 24 hours anymore, but they were once a December staple stored in Tupperware next to the good china. Church Lady Nougat Squares. This was one of the few candy recipes that made children hover in the kitchen doorway. These Nougat Squares combined marshmallows, candied cherries, and candied pineapple into a glossy pastel block that looked like confetti pressed into candy form. Ladies heated the mixture in double boilers while wearing their Christmas corsages made from plastic holly leaves. Once cooled and sliced, the squares sparkled like stained glass windows, fitting for their popularity at church suppers. They were cheap to make because candied fruit went on deep discount after Thanksgiving, and most homemakers stocked up with S&H green stamps they'd saved all year. Modern cooks turn up their noses at candied fruit, which is why these cheerful little squares have all but vanished from today's tables. Martha Washington Candy. No Christmas candy tray in the 1960s was complete without Martha Washington Candy, a party favorite and PTA fundraiser fundraiser, Darling. The centers were made from coconut, pecans, sweetened condensed milk, and sometimes chopped maraschino cherries, all rolled into firm little balls. Once chilled, each ball was dipped into glossy melted chocolate, usually with 2 forks because nobody owned a proper candy dipper. These were the first candies to disappear at office parties, partly because they tasted like a mix between a Mounds bar and a fruitcake. Women stored them in round tin cans kept under the bed or in the cold back porch so the chocolate wouldn't bloom. They faded away as store-bought boxed chocolates took over the holiday aisle. But for one generation, Martha Washingtons were the jewels of the season. Old-fashioned opera fudge. Opera fudge was one of those impressive, finicky confections that mid-century homemakers made to prove they knew their way around a candy thermometer. Unlike chocolate fudge, this one was pure white, made from sugar, cream, and butter, cooked slowly until it reached the perfect stage, then beaten until it turned velvety and opaque. Vintage cookbooks featured variations flavored with vanilla, almond, or a hint of peppermint, making them ideal for Christmas platters lined with doilies from the 5 and dime. Women poured the fudge into shallow pans and waited for it to set, hovering like it was a newborn baby because humidity or impatience could ruin the whole batch. Once firm, they cut it into tiny squares that seemed almost too delicate to touch. The texture was unlike anything sold today. Not chewy, not crumbly, but soft in a way that dissolved the moment it hit your tongue. Folks loved it because it felt like the kind of candy you'd serve at a proper holiday. Open house. Opera fudge faded away as boxed chocolates became the shortcut of choice, but anyone who ever tasted the real thing remembers it as pure Christmas elegance in bite-sized form. Cherry Divinity Swirl. Back when old Christmas books were tucked under every rotary phone, Divinity wasn't just white. Clever homemakers ribboned chopped maraschino cherries through it to create festive pink swirls that looked like they belonged on a department store window display. Making Divinity required boiling syrup until it reached the hardball stage, then pouring it into whipped egg whites while praying the mixture didn't collapse. Instructions warned cooks not to attempt it if the weather was damp, and every grandmother took that rule as gospel. The maraschino cherries added a fruity pop of color, and their syrup tinted the candy a pale blush that made it stand out on a tray full of browns and whites. Women dropped the mixture by spoonfuls onto wax paper, filling up every available counter surface while the back door cracked open to let the winter air help it firm up. The flavor was a mix of vanilla fluff and cherry sweetness, the kind of confection that stuck to your fingertips and left a sugary sheen on your holiday apron. These swirled Divinity gems were the first candies to disappear from the church social table. Today, humidity warnings and the fear of ruining a batch keep people from making them, but they once defined Christmas hospitality. Seafoam Candy. Seafoam was the brown sugar cousin of Divinity, a softer, airier confection that tasted like a cross between caramel and toasted marshmallow. Betty Crocker promoted it in the 1970s as a light holiday treat, though every cook knew it required precision worthy of a laboratory. The key was beating the syrup into the egg whites just long enough to give it lift, but not so long that it became grainy. When it came out right, the mixture formed rustic, cloud-like mounds with tiny bubbles trapped inside, giving the candy its seafoam name. Housewives often added chopped pecans or walnuts, folding them in while the mixture was still warm and glossy. Seafoam candies cooled quickly on wax paper laid across card tables, ironing boards, or even sewing machines dragged into service for the season. The taste was sweet and nutty with a hint of molasses from the brown sugar, the exact flavor that wafted through parsonages and community centers during December gatherings. Seafoam faded as generations moved away from egg white candies, but in its day, it was a back porch Christmas miracle. Golden Peanut Brittle. Peanut Brittle was once a staple in every vintage holiday booklet, but the mid-century stovetop version had its own unique magic. Housewives boiled sugar, corn syrup, and butter until it erupted into a bubbling gold lava that hissed the moment baking soda hit the pot. Adding the peanuts, usually Planters or store-brand tins bought on sale, filled the kitchen with a roasted caramel aroma that clung to the curtains for days. Pouring the mixture onto a greased enamel tray required speed, strategy, and asbestos fingers because it hardened almost immediately. Cookbooks and old recipe cards encouraged stretching the candy with the backs of buttered spoons so it stayed thin and crackable. Once cooled, it snapped cleanly into shards, sharp enough to qualify as holiday weaponry, but no child ever complained. Families filled coffee cans with layers of brittle, separated by wax paper, perfect for gifting teachers and neighbors. Today, store-bought versions lack the homemade shine and the thrill of stretching molten candy across the counter, which is why old-timers insist the original Brittle tasted better. Chocolate-covered coconut bonbons. These little bonbons were the hidden stars of countless 1960s Christmas dessert tables, tucked between Spritz cookies and ribbon candy in the pages of old-school holiday spreads. The centers were simple: shredded coconut, powdered sugar, and sweetened condensed milk mixed until they held together like snowballs packed in a child's mitten. Some homemakers added chopped walnuts or a splash of almond extract for an extra touch of elegance. After chilling the mixture, women rolled it into neat balls and dipped each one into melted chocolate using 2 forks, a process that left trails of chocolate across every dish towel in the kitchen. The finished candies gleamed like tiny ornaments, set on wax paper to harden near the cold window glass. Adults appreciated that they kept well in tins stashed on the back porch, where winter temperatures acted as nature's refrigerator. These bonbons fell out of fashion when holiday candy became more commercialized, but anyone who ever bit into one remembers that satisfying snap of chocolate followed by the soft coconut center, pure mid-century comfort. Butterscotch Haystacks. If any candy screams 1960s church basement Christmas, it's the Butterscotch Haystack. Housewives melted bags of butterscotch morsels with peanut butter over low heat, stirring until the mixture became glossy and fragrant. Then came the magic moment, folding in crunchy chow mein noodles, a pantry shortcut born straight from the era of canned Chinese-American dinners. The mixture hissed slightly as the warm coating hit the cool noodles, making every child in the kitchen lean closer. Women dropped spoonfuls onto wax paper spread across Formica countertops, each cluster looking like miniature bird nests dusted with Christmas magic. Once hardened, they had the perfect mix of sweet and salty, crunchy and creamy, the kind of treat you could pop in your mouth while reaching for another. Haystacks-filled Tupperware containers stacked on top of the fridge, ready for Sunday school parties, office luncheons, and caroling nights. They disappeared in modern times because chow mein noodles fell out of fashion. But in their heyday, haystacks were the quirky little candy that made every church lady feel like she'd discovered something clever. Peppermint Divinity Kisses. Old cookbooks pushed several Divinity variations, but Peppermint Kisses might be the most charming. Tiny dollops of glossy egg white candy kissed with crushed candy canes. Making them was a December ritual requiring patience, precision, and a weather forecast free of humidity. The syrup had to reach just the right temperature, and pouring it into the whipped egg whites required a steady hand that never paused, not even when the phone rang. After folding in the crushed peppermint, the mixture became pale pink with streaks of red like a vintage ribbon candy. Women piped small swirls onto wax paper using spoons or, for the ambitious, metal pastry tips stored in cigar boxes. The kisses dried into airy puffs that melted instantly on the tongue, leaving behind a cool peppermint finish that felt like breathing in winter air. They were placed in crystal dishes on coffee tables next to Christmas issues of Good Housekeeping and ashtrays shaped like poinsettias. Peppermint Divinity vanished because few cooks today want to gamble with egg white candy. But once upon a time, these little puffs were the hallmark of a skilled holiday hostess. Old-fashioned molasses pull candy. Before store-bought taffy became cheap and plentiful, housewives made their own pull candy in kitchens that steamed like saunas from the boiling sugar. The mixture began with molasses, sugar, butter, and a pinch of baking soda, simple pantry staples that every 1970s home kept on hand. Once the syrup reached the right stage, the real work started. Housewives buttered their hands generously, poured the molten candy onto a greased marble slab or an old baking sheet, and began stretching it into long, glossy ropes. Kids hovered close, fascinated by the rhythmic pull and fold motion that turned the candy from dark caramel to a pale, satiny gold. When the texture reached that perfect balance between firm and chewy, the ropes were cut into bite-sized pieces using kitchen shears that were never quite sharp enough. The flavor was rich and old-fashioned, with a warm, smoky sweetness that lingered. Families stored these pieces in repurposed coffee cans lined with wax paper, keeping them on back porches where the winter chill acted like nature's candy shop. Molasses pull candy faded away because nobody has time for sugar gymnastics anymore, but it once signaled the start of true Christmas cheer: ribbon candy bark. While ribbon candy was a store-bought favorite, old Christmas pamphlets encouraged homemakers to repurpose broken pieces into a candy bark that felt both thrifty and festive. Women would lay out shards of red, green, and white ribbon candy on a wax paper-lined tray. Then pour warm vanilla or white chocolate candy coating over top. As As the mixture cooled, the candy pieces softened slightly, releasing that unmistakable peppermint aroma that made every December kitchen smell like a five and dime. Once hardened, the bark broke into jagged jewel-like slabs that caught the light from aluminum trees and bubble lights. Kids loved studying each piece for the swirls and stripes trapped inside, as if the candy had frozen a Christmas parade in motion. This treat was beloved partly because it made use of ribbon candy that arrived crushed after a bumpy holiday mail trip, saving families from wasting a single sweet. Homemakers wrapped bundles in cellophane and tied them with curling ribbon for teachers, neighbors, and the mailman. Ribbon candy bark disappeared when modern white chocolate replaced old-fashioned almond bark, and the nostalgic red and green ribbon candy became specialty store territory. But in its time, it was the thrifty homemaker's holiday masterpiece, Marshmallow Pecan Fudge. Before the 1970s popularized the famous fluff-based fantasy fudge, earlier Christmas cookbooks featured a simpler stovetop version with marshmallows stirred directly into the hot mixture. Cooks melted sugar, evaporated milk and butter until the whole house smelled like a candy shop preparing for December crowds. Marshmallows were tossed in by the handful, melting into silky threads that gave the fudge its signature texture. Chopped pecans, always pecans at Christmas, were folded in at the end, creating a satisfying crunch in each square. The fudge set in shallow pans placed near drafty windows, where winter air cooled the mixture faster than any refrigerator could. Once sliced, each piece gleamed with a glossy top and tiny ripples where the marshmallows had collapsed into the chocolate. Families stacked the squares between sheets of wax paper in metal tins that once held sewing supplies the other 11 months of the year. This fudge disappeared partly because modern recipes rely on marshmallow cream, but the old stovetop version tasted deeper and richer, like holiday tradition boiled down to its sweetest form. Angel Cream Candy. Angel Cream Candy was one of the softest, dreamiest holiday confections, a kind of halfway point between fudge and divinity that felt like biting into a vanilla snowbank. Housewives heated sugar, cream, and butter until the mixture thickened, then beat it vigorously until it turned pale and velvety. Betty suggested adding a splash of vanilla or almond extract to give it that warm Christmas kitchen aroma that drifted all the way into the living room, where the television played Lawrence Welk's holiday special. Once the mixture reached the right consistency, it was poured into shallow pans and left to cool near a cracked window, where the December air worked its magic. When sliced, each piece revealed a smooth, slightly glossy interior that melted the moment it met your tongue. Families served these squares on cut glass platters alongside pressed cookies and fruitcake slices wrapped in plastic from the A&P. The texture was unlike anything store-bought, soft, dreamy, and almost buttercream-like. These candies were a favorite of ladies' circles and afternoon visiting because they paired beautifully with strong percolator coffee. Angel Cream Candy faded away once store-bought fudge became cheap and ubiquitous. But for those who remember it, this was the candy that tasted like Christmas innocence. Pineapple Snowballs. Pineapple Snowballs were a mid-century sensation, promoted in retro holiday booklets as a refreshing tropical treat for winter gatherings. Housewives loved them because they were inexpensive, cheerful, and required no stovetop bravery. The mixture combined crushed pineapple, powdered sugar, softened butter, and sometimes a handful of finely chopped pecans for good measure. Once the batter firmed up, it was rolled into bite-sized balls and coated in a blizzard of shredded coconut that stuck to everything: hands, aprons, and the kitchen linoleum. The finished candies looked like little snowdrifts stacked on holiday trays, lined with green paper doilies from the five and dime. Their flavor was surprisingly bright, sweet pineapple with a cool coconut finish that felt like sunshine sneaking into December. Kids grabbed them first because they resembled the snowballs they tossed outside, while the grown-ups prepared the ham. Families stored these in repurposed tin coffee cans on the unheated back porch, where they stayed perfectly firm. Pineapple Snowballs vanished as tastes shifted away from fruit-forward candies. But in their heyday, they were the Christmas treat that reminded families of warmer days, while the world outside the window glistened white. Peanut butter potato fudge squares. Not different from the rolled potato candy, this lesser-known creation turned mashed potatoes into a soft, creamy fudge that tasted far richer than the ingredients suggested. Housewives mixed powdered sugar into a small scoop of leftover mashed potatoes until the mixture turned thick thick and glossy, then added peanut butter and a splash of vanilla. Stirring it by hand was a workout, especially when the mixture tightened up and clung stubbornly to the wooden spoon like a toddler refusing bedtime. The fudge was spread into pans, smoothed with a buttered spatula, and chilled until firm enough to slice into modest little squares. The texture was silky, almost truffle-like, with the peanut butter offering a deep, roasted warmth. These squares appeared on many church basement bazaar tables because they traveled well and cost next to nothing to make during years when grocery budgets were tight. Adults appreciated that the recipe stretched ingredients without feeling skimpy. The candy faded away once instant mashed potatoes replaced homemade ones, and the recipe no longer behaved the same. But one bite of the original could transport you right back to a Formica table lit by colored C9 Christmas bulbs. Cinnamon spiced hard candy. Before every grocery store carried tubs of bright red cinnamon drops, also known as Red Hots, homemakers made their own. A stovetop adventure that filled the house with a bold, spicy aroma. Sugar, water, and corn syrup were boiled to the hard crack stage, while cinnamon oil waited in a tiny brown bottle that looked like it belonged in a science kit. Once the syrup hit temperature, the cinnamon oil was added, and a burst of fragrant steam shot through the kitchen, causing anyone nearby to cough dramatically and laugh afterward. Mothers poured the molten red syrup onto buttered baking sheets and scored it with a sharp knife before it hardened completely. As it cooled, the candy turned into glossy red shards that sparkled like stained glass ornaments. Kids would suck on a piece until their tongues turned pink and tingly, a badge of Christmas courage. Families stored these gems in canning jars on the counter, where they looked festive even without decorations. This candy disappeared because cinnamon oil became harder to find and modern cooks grew wary of stovetop sugar work. But in its day, homemade Red Hots were the fragrance and flavor of an old-fashioned Christmas. Orange cream taffy. This cheerful orange-tinged taffy was a darling of 1960s and 70s Christmas cookbooks, especially for families who wanted something bright and citrusy amid all the chocolate and mint. The syrup started with sugar, butter, cream, and a splash of orange extract that made the kitchen smell like freshly peeled fruit. Once the mixture reached the soft crack stage, it was poured onto a greased marble board or enamel tray to cool just enough to handle. Then came the signature step, pulling the candy. Housewives buttered their hands and stretched the warm orange mass over and over until it lightened in color and developed that familiar taffy sheen. Children were often drafted to help, giggling while the candy grew longer and smoother with each pass. When the texture was right, the ropes were twisted, cut into bite-sized pieces, and wrapped in squares of wax paper printed with little holiday bells. The flavor was creamy and citrus bright, a welcome change from the heavier sweets of December. Orange cream taffy disappeared from modern tables because candy pulling became a lost art, but it once brought families together in the warmest, stickiest way possible. Maple cream bonbons. Maple cream bonbons were one of those elegant little candies Betty Crocker tucked into her 1950s holiday booklets to make homemakers feel like they were hosting a department store tea party rather than a noisy family get-together. These bonbons started with real maple flavoring, the tiny bottle that lived in the back of the cabinet next to the long-forgotten lemon extract, combined with butter, powdered sugar, and a spoonful of cream. The mixture thickened into a pliable dough that mothers shaped into small rounds or ovals, sometimes pressing a pecan half into the top for decoration. After a quick chill, each piece was dipped into melted chocolate, creating a glossy shell that snapped softly when bitten. The inside was silky and sweet with a warm maple aroma that reminded folks of pancake breakfasts at the church fellowship hall. Women arranged the finished bonbons on silver-rimmed plates beside embroidered napkins that only came out at Christmas. These candies vanished from modern tables, partly because authentic maple flavoring fell out of fashion, and partly because dipping candies by hand is a lost December art. But in their prime, maple cream bonbons made every homemaker feel like she could rival the Christmas window displays at Woolworth's. Saltine toffee squares. Long before Pinterest discovered it, retro cookbooks had homemakers making saltine toffee squares, a thrifty, clever candy that blended salty crackers with buttery toffee in a way that felt downright magical. The process started by lining a metal baking sheet with a neat grid of saltines, the kind that came in wax paper-lined cardboard sleeves that always tore unevenly. In a saucepan, butter and brown sugar were boiled until bubbling and fragrant, then poured over the crackers until every inch was coated. Once baked, the toffee bubbled up around the edges, fusing the crackers together into one caramel gold sheet. Mothers showered the whole whole thing with chocolate chips, spreading the melted chocolate into a smooth layer as the heat worked its magic. After cooling on the back porch, nature's refrigerator, the candy snapped into rustic, jagged pieces that tasted far richer than the ingredients suggested. The flavor was a perfect balance of salty, sweet, buttery, and crisp, making it a favorite at office cookie swaps and youth group gift exchanges. This early version disappeared as packaged toffee bars became more accessible, but the memory of cracking apart those homemade squares still feels like pure holiday mischief. Spiced orange balls. Spiced orange balls were the bright, tangy candies that cut through December's chocolate overload like a burst of sunshine. Betty Crocker versions mixed crushed vanilla wafers, orange juice concentrate, powdered sugar, and a dash of warm spices like nutmeg or clove. The dough came together into a fragrant, slightly sticky mass that mothers scooped into small balls before rolling in more powdered sugar. The scent alone could fill the house, citrusy, warm, and just sharp enough to feel festive. These candies were often stored in round tins lined with wax paper, and every time someone lifted the lid, the aroma escaped like a cheerful little secret. Women loved serving them because they were inexpensive, required no stovetop boiling, and added a splash of color to a tray dominated by browns and whites. Kids grabbed them because the tangy sweetness felt refreshing after one too many fudge squares. Spiced orange balls disappeared as orange concentrate went out of style, but in the 60s and 70s, they were the unofficial palate cleanser of the Christmas candy spread. Maple pecan pralines. These vintage pralines weren't quite southern and not quite northern. They lived in that cozy middle ground, specialized in for a national audience. The recipe called for butter, sugar, cream, maple flavoring, and a generous scoop of pecan stirred in once the mixture thickened. As the candy cooked, the aroma of maple and toasted nuts drifted through the kitchen, settling into the curtains and making the whole house smell like the inside of a holiday gift shop. When the mixture reached just the right stage, women dropped spoonfuls onto wax paper to cool into rustic patties with glossy tops and craggy pecan clusters. The texture was soft but firm, almost creamy, with the pecans giving each bite a satisfying crunch. These pralines were the pride of home economists who demonstrated them at church workshops and PTA meetings, showing mothers how to stretch holiday budgets without sacrificing elegance. Families packed them in Christmas tins padded with paper towels, a mid-century trick that kept candies from sticking to each other. Pralines faded as people moved away from stovetop sugarwork, but they remain one of the most nostalgic candies ever to vanish from December dessert trays. Cherry coconut ice. Cherry coconut ice was a showstopper in any 1960s Christmas lineup, a no-cook, pink and white block candy that looked like something from a fanciful holiday window display. The recipe combined powdered sugar, sweetened condensed milk, and shredded coconut to form a firm, moldable mixture. Half of it was left white, while the other half was tinted with a splash of maraschino cherry juice, turning it a vivid rosy pink that children found irresistible. Homemakers pressed the white layer into a loaf pan lined with wax paper, then added the cherry layer on top, smoothing it with the back of a spoon dipped in warm water. After several hours in the icebox, the block was sliced into neat squares that looked like edible building bricks for a gingerbread village. The flavor was sweet, creamy, and lightly fruity, with a chewy coconut adding texture that lingered pleasantly. These candies were stacked in pyramids on cut glass plates beside Spritz cookies and ribbon candy, creating a colorful centerpiece for holiday tables. Cherry coconut ice disappeared when tastes shifted away from coconut-laden sweets, but for those who remember it, this candy was the cheerful crown jewel of a mid-century Christmas spread. And that wraps up our walk through the Christmas candies that once defined December kitchens all across America, long before supermarkets lined the aisles with shiny tins and plastic-wrapped assortments. These were the candies that lived on wax paper-covered card tables, cooled on drafty windowsills, and filled every corner of the house with the smell of sugar bubbling on the stovetop. Every batch carried its own little ritual: the whoosh of the oven door, the snapping sound of a candy thermometer tapping the pot, and the soft hum of carols drifting from the old radio on the counter. For many families, Christmas candy wasn't just a treat, it was the heartbeat of the season. These candies may have slipped off our modern tables, replaced by boxed sweets and prepackaged shortcuts, but the memories behind them haven't gone anywhere. They're still tucked into recipe tins, saved in old notebooks, and lingering in the stories families tell every December. Thank you for revisiting these forgotten Christmas treats with me today. And if you ever decide to bring one of them back, even just one, don't be surprised if that first bite takes you straight back to a kitchen warmed by the oven, with carols playing low and powdered sugar drifting through the air like a little indoor snowfall.